Now, CS Mutahi Kagwe has warned of more bad news in the coming days as the numbers of confirmed COVID-19 cases now rise to 172 in the country. Now, Kagwe continued to caution Kenyans of observing good hygiene standards, social distancing and staying at home, with the virus now spreading across different counties. Tonight, the numbers across the globe are at 1,381,014 confirmed cases, 78,269 deaths and 292,973 recoveries, with the U.S. currently leading with the number of cases at 378,289 confirmed cases. Now, we'll be bringing you details of this and much more. But first, let's take a look at stories making headlines tonight. Well, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for joining us here at Ibru Primetime News. We have a lot lined up for you here in the country and across the globe. My name is Diana Rachel Mbugua. Our sign language interpreter for tonight is Joyce Wairimu. Now, the Health Ministry says you have seen nothing yet of the coronavirus crisis in Kenya and that more troubling times are yet to come. Health CS Mutahi Kagwe says the storm is far from over and is likely to rock the country for at least 2 months.
We are at war with an enemy that is invisible.
Tonight, the Health Ministry is putting up a helpless face in the COVID-19 battle, with the Health Ministry now saying that the storm is far from over.
The virus is already here with us, and we cannot run away from it. It is around us, and we have embarked with it a chasing game.
Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe warning you to prepare for a possible worst-case scenario in regards to the COVID-19 outbreak in the country.
We are praying and hoping for the best. But clearly, we must also prepare for the worst. And mentally, we must prepare ourselves to face an insurmountable situation.
While painting a grim image of the near future, Kagwe says the situation is likely to get worse before it gets better, adding that the country may continue to battle with the pandemic for at least another 2 months.
Let us brace ourselves for bad news. Let us be ready. There are 2 things that are fortunate for us. One is that the disease that Kenyans are getting is very mild. We have been getting very mild infections, and I'm going to ask Dr. Amos to say a little bit about that. As you can tell, the mortality rate for us has been quite low, but this is no reason for us to be relaxed at all.
This, even as the Health Ministry plans to nip the threat of the infection in the bud by rolling out measures on those working in the front line.
Healthcare workers who get into contact with these cases don't go home, but go to a specific place and therefore prevent cross-contamination with members of the family and the public.
For now, Kagwe says you should strive to observe government's directives in as much as it might not be the anti-COVID war magic wand.
Let us be ready, because all the measures that we are going to take will not stop the disease abruptly.
CS Kagwe spoke while announcing that the country had recorded 14 more cases in the novel coronavirus, raising the total number to 172 with 3 recoveries. He noted that 4 of the 14 cases have a recent history of travel from Tanzania, South Africa, the United Arab Emirates and the United States, while 10 were picked by surveillance teams in the country.
Tafadhalini ni tufanye vile serikali inasema. Tufanye vile serikali inasema. Usijaribu. Usione wewe kama ni mwelevu sana. Hii virusi haina mtu mwelevu. Hii virusi ukicheza nayo sio uelevu, ni ujinga.
Now, the coronavirus pandemic has now penetrated other grassroots levels after new cases were confirmed in Mandera, Kisii and Kiambu counties. Health Cabinet Secretary Mutahi Kagwe, who confirmed 14 new cases of COVID-19 in the country, cautioned Kenyans to be mentally prepared of severe and massive cases in the coming days. Our reporter Jeff Hayemba with more details.
It's not all rosy in the country as the number of the coronavirus infections continues to surge each and every day. Since the first case of the coronavirus was reported in the country on the 13th of March this year, the number has been ballooning daily, and by Tuesday the figures clipped 172 after 14 new cases were discovered.
In the same 24 hours, we have tested 696 samples, out of which 14 people have tested positive for the disease. 12 of the 14 are Kenyans, while 2 are foreign nationals.
Majority of the cases which had been reported earlier are those carried by the travelers from abroad. However, the situation has worsened with the infection and now trickling to counties at the grassroots levels. 4
of them are from quarantine facilities, while 10 were picked by our surveillance teams. We have now, out of the 14 people that I mentioned, for instance, 7 are from Nairobi. Mombasa has 2 new ones. Machakos has 1. Kisii has 1. Kiambu has 1. And Mandera has 2 cases.
The entrance of the new cases into the counties of Kisii, Kiambu and Mandera comes after the government contained the movement of the hotspot counties of Nairobi, Kilifi, Kwale and Mombasa.
And the 2 reported cases from Mandera is a recent travel from Mombasa County. That explains why the decision by the president was taken yesterday to close some of the areas where we feel people moving into and out of are causing further spread of the virus.
It remains unclear whether the government shall contain the new counties should the infection spread like bushfire. According to Mutahi Kagwe, Kenyans should brace for hard and tough moments ahead.
This is not going to be a short term. It is not going to be a short-term activity. We are not going to be dealing with this disease only for the next couple of weeks. Let us brace ourselves for the long term. And by a long term, I mean for the next couple of months. Usione wewe kama ni mwelevu sana. Hii virusi haina mtu mwelevu. Hii virusi ukicheza nayo, sio uelevu, ni ujinga.
The government has so far intensified the measures to curb the deadly coronavirus, which has so far claimed more than 75,000 people, with about 1.3 people infected across the world. Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukuru Yatani on Tuesday received a boost of 2 billion Kenyan shillings from the multi-agency team fighting corruption, money meant to fight COVID-19. It's now exactly the 27th day since Kenya was hit by the coronavirus pandemic, a move that has now forced the government to look all the possible avenues by sourcing for the funds, at least to mitigate the pandemic. Reporting for Ebru TV, I'm Jeff Hayemba.
Thank you, Jeff Hayemba. Now, families whose kin died from COVID-19 will be given only 24 hours to pick their loved ones from the mortuary, failure to which the body will be buried by the government. Chief Government Pathologist Johansson Odwar says this is part of the measures put in place to prevent a pileup of bodies infected with the coronavirus, which he says are potentially infectious.
This directive comes a day after the Ministry of Health Chief Administrative Secretary Dr. Mercy Mwangangi announced that all victims of the coronavirus pandemic had to be buried within 24 hours and the burials to be restricted to less than 15 close family members.
We want to reiterate that persons who pass away due to coronavirus will have to be buried within 24 hours from the time of death. And the burials are restricted to less than 15 close family members.
The directive is aimed at containing the spread of the virus to people, especially relatives and morgue attendants who come into contact with infected bodies. According to the chief government pathologist, Johansen Odwor, the victims' remains are being put into 2 body bags, with the outer one being thoroughly disinfected to prevent any infections. Odwor further disclosed that bodies of coronavirus victims are not being embalmed as part of protecting the morticians from getting infected with the virus. He also stated that the government shall provide logistical support, including transport, adding that if no family members is available within 24 hours, the body will be interred at the cemetery nearest to where the person died. As of Monday, Kenya had recorded 6 COVID-19 related deaths and 158 cases of infected persons. In a bid to tame the spread of the contagious disease, President Uhuru Kenyatta has announced a new raft of measures aimed at combating the spread of COVID-19, which include the immediate cessation of movement in and out of the Nairobi metropolitan area for 21 days.
Facebook's WhatsApp application has tightened message forwarding limits, restricting users to sharing forwarded content 1 chat at a time after a jump in messages touting bogus medical advice since the start of the coronavirus crisis. Now, the pandemic, which has killed more than 70,000 people worldwide, has been accompanied by what the World Health Organization has called an infodemic of misinformation, prompting governments and other authorities to urge social media companies to do more to combat the problem. WhatsApp, which has more than 2 billion users worldwide, said in a blog post it made the change after observing a significant increase in the number of forwards since the start of the coronavirus crisis. Since last year, users have been able to forward a message to only 5 individuals or groups at once, down from an earlier limit of 20. The app also labeled any messages that had been forwarded more than 5 times. The WHO has joined the daily increasing list of those condemning 2 French doctors who suggested that Africans be used as guinea pigs for the vaccine test for COVID-19. World Health Organization Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus termed the remarks as racist and an extension of the colonial mentality.
The global coronavirus pandemic has seemingly broke the world borders and united the globe in efforts to find a vaccine that would stop the cold the world caught from the Chinese sneeze. The global efforts then took an interesting twist last Wednesday when 2 French doctors appeared on an international media outlet and made the comments that angered an entire continent.
Je peux être provocateur. Est-ce qu'on ne devrait pas faire cette étude en Afrique où il n'y a pas de masque, pas de traitement, pas de réanimation, un peu comme c'est fait d'ailleurs.
Dr. Jean-Paul Mira said the test would yield better results when carried out in Africa, where there are no masks and no treatment for the novel coronavirus.
Pour certaines études dans le sida, ou chez les prostituées, on essaye des choses parce qu'on sait elles sont hautement exposées et elles ne se protègent pas. Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez?
His colleague Dr. Camille Loncht chimed in, saying that Africa, which is incapable of battling the pandemic, should test the treatment first, as it has no chance of stopping the virus in any other way.
Alors vous avez raison, et d'ailleurs on est en train de réfléchir en parallèle à une étude en Afrique justement pour faire ce même type d'approche avec le BCG, un placebo. Je pense qu'il y a un appel d'offres qui est sorti, va sortir, et je pense qu'on va en effet sérieusement.
The comments attracted the wrath of Africans from all walks of life, from politicians to footballers like former Chelsea star Didier Drogba, Newcastle winger Christian Atsu, and Samuel Eto'o, who lashed out at the doctors, saying Africa would not be used for coronavirus trial vaccine.
And we condemn this with the strongest terms possible.
And while addressing on the COVID-19 pandemic on Monday, WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus joined the list of those condemning the duo.
I was so appalled This kind of racist remarks actually would not help. It goes against the solidarity. Africa cannot and will not be a testing ground for any vaccine.
The man at the helm of the global health body further added that the hangover from a colonial mentality has to stop.
And the hangover from a colonial mentality has to stop. And WHO will not allow this to happen. And it was a disgrace, actually, and appalling to hear during the 21st century from scientists that kind of remark.
The two doctors have since apologized, even as Dr. Ghebreyesus urged the world to embrace solidarity in order to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, saying that all human beings are and will be treated equally.
We assure you that this will not happen in Africa and will not happen elsewhere in any country. Proper protocols will be followed and human beings will be treated as human beings.
Now, Treasury has allocated 2 billion shillings to the COVID-19 emergency fund to combat the contagion. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission donated the funds which were recovered from graft cases. Take a look.
Investigative agencies are now reining in on the surging pandemic that has killed 6 people so far in the country. The DCI, DPP and EACC have added 2 billion to the kitty of COVID-19 emergency fund.
This particular fund will be used as a second buffer. When you are done with the national, the budget, and alongside we have the Corona emergency fund. When the situation demands now, we are going to tap into this resource to fight the pandemic.
DPP Nurdin Haji and EACC Twalib Mbarak said the funds were part of recovered proceeds of crimes such as corruption and money laundering.
We had roughly 2.9 billion shillings, and we felt that after the call by His Excellency the President on the COVID Emergency Response Fund, that these funds could be used towards helping Kenya in facing this emergency and fighting this pandemic that has broken out globally.
We still have money, the way the DPP has said, that is hanging in court, because there are some cases that we are not able to get the money because people have appealed. So until the appeal is gone is when we'll be able to recover that money, and that money we believe that in the long run, both with the DCI, the DPP and other multi-agency entities will be able to deliver more money to the government.
DPP Haji said the prosecution fund established last year had so far netted 2.9 billion Kenya shillings, from which the 2 billion presented to the Treasury had been retrieved to aid in the fight against the novel coronavirus.
We are revising our budget, the supplementary budget at the moment, and we are ready to go. And we are not sparing any item, including even development. We are actually partially suspending some of the development program, so that now we address it next financial year, hoping that things will have improved.
Cabinet Secretary Kuriatani has revealed that the Treasury had received a pledge of 7 billion Kenya shillings from the Sports Fund, as well as other individuals, organizations and state agencies to combat this surging pandemic as cases in the country continue to soar. Abdelaziz Hashimi, Brew TV.
Now, to shift gears away from the COVID-19, retired Catholic Archbishop Raphael Simon Dingi Mwananzeki has been laid to rest at the Holy Family Basilica in Nairobi. The ceremony, which was attended by a section of leaders, adhered to the Ministry of Health regulations on social distancing.
A somber mood engulfed the Holy Family Basilica in Nairobi as Catholic leader John Cardinal Njue led the Requiem Mass for the retired Archbishop Ndingi Mwana-Anzeki. The Archbishop died on March 31, 2020, aged 89 after a long illness.
Such boldness was motivated by the value he attached in doing good and defending the same, whether it yield any results for the movement or not. His motivation was the triumph of good over evil. That glorious manifestation of the reward for the just was his springboard.
While factoring in the social distance rule to avert the spread of COVID-19, the mourners stood at least 1 meter apart from each other as they follow the proceedings of the service.
This country and the world has lost a great leader whose loss is not only to this country, to the Catholic Church and the entire Church of Christ and all people of goodwill, and that this loss will be felt in the entire world. His Excellency asked us all to emulate the very, very, very good character of the late Archbishop Emeritus and to practice what he told us.
Mwana-Anzeki was born on December 25, 1930 in Machakos. He served in the Diocese of Machakos in 1969 to 1971 and Nakuru in 1972 to 1996. Ndingi later became the Archbishop of Nairobi in 1997, where he served until his retirement in 2007. In attendance was Chief Justice David Maraga, his deputy Philomena Mwilu, Cabinet Secretary of Devolution Eugene Wamalwa, Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula, Wiper Party leader Kalonzo Musyoka, among several other clerics. Abdiaziz Ashimi, Brew TV.
Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru has breathed a sigh of relief after the High Court in Nairobi ruled that impeachment proceedings against her cannot proceed due to the social distancing rules aimed at curbing the spread of coronavirus in the country.
Governor Waiguru. The embattled governor has tried to pull all stops, leaving nothing to chance to ensure that the planned motion against her does not continue. She had to pull the support of Jubilee Party, in which the Secretary General Raphael Tuju fired the leader of the majority for what he termed as lack of leadership. Waiguru also lined to her side that Kirinyaga County Commissioner who warned against meeting due to social distancing rules. And now the judiciary has come to her aid to at least give her breathing space and enable her reorganize and re-strategize. Justin Weldon Korir, sitting in Nairobi, ruled that Governor Waiguru, who had moved to court seeking to stop the motion, had demonstrated that proceeding with the impeachment motion during the COVID-19 crisis was likely to violate her rights to fair administrative action. Justice Korir, while appreciating the County Assembly of Kirinyaga and the Speaker were executing their constitutional mandate, and they had failed to take into account the effect of the COVID-19 pandemic on its operation, and thus need to bring back such wayward body to the path of the law. The judge issued conservatory orders to block any attempts to discuss the governor pending the hearing and determination of the petition or the containment of the COVID-19 pandemic, whichever events occurs first. Waiguru is accused by the County Assembly of Kirinyaga of violating the Constitution and gross misconduct.
Now, a woman who has been spending nights in a roofless house in Eldoret has a reason to smile after her plight was aired on Ibru TV. The story attracted a well-wisher who has offered to pay her 6 months' rent upfront.
Ven Bosibori had to stay in a roofless house with her 1-month-old baby for 3 days after her landlord removed iron sheets from her house in a bid to eject her. According to Bosibori, she had already paid 3,500 shillings for rent and wondered why her landlady could not be patient enough to allow her to clear the 500 shillings debt.
Nitaweza enda wapi saa hii na corona kweli? Mimi sitoki kwa nyumba, yeye arudishe mapati, corona isha, anipe miezi ya kukaa na nitoke. Hata hakuniambia notice ndio hii. Mzee yangu anafanya kazi ya bodaboda. Amekuwa akipata mapato tukilipa huyu mama mzuri. But saa hii na hii changa ya corona ndio imefanya pesa imerudi chini, watu hakuna town.
However, she can now breathe a sigh of relief after a well-wisher who watched her moving story on Every TV has offered to help her and her child.
Tangu jana tu nimelala kwa chirani, niliogopa huku baridi juu ya mtoto, ngarau hata mtoto naye asikii poa, lakini saa hii na hii kusikia hii sifa, najua hata yeye amepona. Mimi sina ubaya kabisa, sina ubaya na huyu mama kabisa, na abarikiwe tu hata mahali alipo. Asikie tu. Mimi sina ubaya kabisa na yeye kabisa.
Alton and Jumba, the well-wisher, has called on house owners to be considerate, especially during this period when Kenyans are experiencing economic challenges due to the outbreak of coronavirus.
We saw the story of Ven, and I was so saddened by what a Kenyan can do to another Kenyan in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I took the initiative to come down to get to hear what she has gone through and what us as fellow Kenyans can do to her. So do not take advantage of this pandemic kunyanyasa watu wengine ambao hawajiwezi.
On April 1st, the Landlords and Tenants Association of Kenya called for landlords across the country to offer their tenants rent waivers for the months of April, May and June.
Tungependa Rais aje apatie relief, at least landlords wapatiwe package ya kuwasaidia. Kuna wale landlords ambao wana ile rent ndio pesa ya kupatia chakula. Kwa hivyo tunasema landlords wote wapatiwe package na serikali.
The same sentiments were echoed by President Uhuru Kenyatta during his address to the nation. The contagious virus has so far claimed over 74,000 lives and infected over 1.3 million people globally. Over 285,000 others have recovered. Winnie Lubembe for Every TV.
All right, time for us to take a very short break, but we'll be right back with more news. Stay with us. All right, welcome back to Ibru Primetime News. Now, today, the 7th of April, the World Health Organization observes the World Health Day, a day to recognize the contribution of healthcare providers worldwide. Now, this year, the day is marked at the center of the coronavirus pandemic, with the WHO Director General, Dr. Tedros, celebrating nurses at the front line of the pandemic. Dr. Tedros saying the pandemic has, among others, served to shed the spotlight the importance of nurses who most often than not get little recognition. The World Health Organization calling for the provision of personal protective equipment to all healthcare providers across the globe.
The COVID-19 pandemic is reminding us of the vital role nurses and midwives play. Every day, nurses are putting themselves at risk to alleviate suffering and save lives. They are reorganizing wards to open more beds for COVID-19 patients while continuing to provide care for other patients with urgent health needs, including women in labor. And nurses are doing the unthinkable because critical COVID patients are isolated. The last human touch they may feel is that of a nurse's hand. I hear stories about nurses video calling family members late in the night so they can say goodbye to a dying relative. Because health workers are on the front lines of the fight against COVID-19, they are also among the most at risk. More than 3,000 health workers have been infected, and many have paid the ultimate price. When health workers are exposed or become sick, they have to go home and stay there for at least 2 weeks. Hospitals scramble to find replacements. That's why we must ensure that health workers have the medical masks and other personal protective equipment they need.
Now, about 68.1% of health workers in the country have not been trained on how to handle COVID-19 patients in the country. This is below the 5,000 targeted number of health workers the Ministry of Health said will be trained to handle COVID-19 cases. Our health affairs reporter Winnie Lubembe sat down in a one-on-one interview with the Kenya National Union of Clinical Officers Chair Peterson Wachira and highlights the risk health workers are exposed to while attending to patients with COVID-19. Take a look.
Peterson Wachira, thank you very much for coming by today, Kenya Union Clinical Officers Chair. Appreciate your time. So let's just start with the basics. Of course, one clinical officer was infected with COVID-19 and you guys had a statement and you said the government is not taking this case seriously or treat it with the urgency that it deserves. So can you just tell us that particular statement? Because the government, according to them, they're doing all they can to ensure that all health workers are taken care of.
I think, let me say that, and thanks for having me, and thanks for also bringing me here to air our plight as health workers. Let me say that in any outbreak, because I also have an experience with the Ebola outbreak in West Africa, you will never be 100% prepared. Okay. But there are basics that must be seen to be done by a government early enough for containment of the same and the mitigation of the outbreak. All right. One of them is that you must ensure that you are having enough staffing, adequate staffing, because one of the realities with any outbreak is that you must lose some of your medical workers to quarantine, not lose them like they die, but some of them will get infected and you'll have to quarantine them. When you quarantine them, you must have a reserve force, so you must recruit more. Number two, you must train them, and the training that you are doing, it must confer confidence that they can be able to use the protective mechanisms you have put in place, and that will make them take care of the patients. We ran a study this weekend, and a whopping 68.1% of health workers, not clinical officers, because we did as the Union for Doctors, for clinical officers, for nurses, for lab technologists and scientists, and for the pharmaceutical technologists. 68.1% say they have not been trained.
At the moment?
Yes.
Okay.
68.4%, they say they have not been trained on how to use a PPE. Because actually a PPE, if used wrongly, becomes a source of infection. And we have seen so many people infect themselves when they are doffing off or removing the PPE. Of course, the third thing is that they must provide the protective gears early enough. Those are the basics that the government should actually start with. So to that extent, I think we lagged behind. Our government lagged behind a bit. And that is why, because our role as the leadership of the unions and the leadership of the employees, as per the Article 41 of the Constitution, is to ensure that everybody has a safe working environment and also remuneration, because also they must feel that they are appreciated in terms of they have a risk allowance that is commensurate. Because in the same study, we also asked them to tell us what protective equipment they have. 75% of them, they only have gloves and masks. They do not have the other components that make a personal protective equipment, and that includes, there is a cap, there is a coverall, which is an overall, there are boots, there is an apron. They do not have those things. And what that means is that most of them, they will either not see the suspects, or if they will see the suspects without their knowledge, they will be infected. And that is why we can see that the number of clinical officers especially, because we are the most at risk. And we are the most at risk in this way, that when you come to a health facility, you'll meet a nurse who will triage you, probably for 2 minutes in an open space.
Yeah.
But then because of confidentiality, you'll have to sit with me, a clinical officer, for about 15 minutes in an enclosed room because we have to ensure confidentiality. And I have to take my time, like 15 minutes according to WHO standards, so that I can diagnose you. By the time I'm diagnosing you and saying that you might be having COVID, you have already infected me. That is why by that time it was 1 person. By now we are having 3. We have 2 more in Mombasa who got infected locally, not imported from outside. They were infected in line of duty.
Talking about the number, 68.1% say they have not been trained, and yet the government said, especially on the onset of COVID-19 in the country, they said they're targeting over 5,000 health workers to be trained. So then, what does this say? Is this enough? Is this not? Because 5,000, first of all, is it enough to deal with then the cases which are actually on the rise in the country?
Number 1 is that we have not trained 5,000.
Okay.
The reality is, the last time I checked, we were about 1,200. Because what happened, they only trained some trainers of trainers, a few people in every county, so that they can train the others. But now, there is a question. Then they didn't have the funds to continue training within the counties. I have seen some of the trainings being offered, and we have raised this concern even with the Ministry of Health, that actually they do not meet the standards. Because for any training to be said to be effective, it must confer confidence on that person, so that they feel that after this training, I can actually handle this person with COVID-19, and I can be confident that I'll be protected by the protective gears that I'm using. But with 75.1% not having been trained on how to wear and remove a PPE, you can be sure most of them will not be confident, because an online or a 2-hour CME cannot actually be able to do this. For example, when we are going for Ebola fight in West Africa, we got a 4 days training locally, and when we went to other side, we got a 4-day training, and the last day is actually about the PPE. You wear your protective equipments, and there are simulated case studies where you go and see patients. So after that, you are very confident that I can be able to use this, and I'll not get infected. And that is why, out of 178 Kenyans, nobody was infected. We came back without anybody of us being infected, because training really matters. You can give people PPEs, but if they don't know how to use them, they're actually going to be infected from those PPEs that you gave them, and you're going to actually lose medic.
Okay. So then, essentially, because now it's actually a race against time, because then the numbers are increasing. Probably we do not have the luxury of time to offer probably adequate training, or as what you're saying, according to the standards. So then what happens? Can't you sort of like squeeze in the 2 hours to ensure that at least you get the basics, and then the rest probably learn on the job as you go on? Because we don't have time.
You see, time is always there.
Okay.
And we can either have time for training, or have time for barriers. Because if you don't train them well, if they don't have the confidence, if we do it in a rushed manner, then we get them infecting themselves, infecting more Kenyans. They even become a source of spread. Then we have so many medics quarantined. We have few to see the patients. We are going to get a surge in the cases. And then we are going to start getting cases like we are seeing in China, in US, in Italy, and in Spain. So I think 2 days, we can maybe squeeze it into 2 days. We have enough capacity in the health workers who can train. Because we have also been trying to propose to the ministry 168 people, plus the ones who have been trained, provided with facilitation, we can actually train the whole country in a week. In a week, we'll have covered the whole country. Then we'll be able to cascade down and take the PPEs. And then the moment we take care of the medic, I can assure you the population will be taken care of.
Okay. Yeah. All right. And then in terms of talking about remuneration as well to all the health workers, not only clinical officers, the government is somewhat short of funds. There has been an M-Pesa pay bill number that was set up to, Kenyans and organizations to just come and try and help in one way or the other. And then here on this other side, the health workers are asking for some sort of remuneration. Isn't that,
you see, what we are trying to say is that the government must be seen to appreciate the health workers. And this is not a problem that has come with COVID-19. This is an outcry that has been there. Let me give you some examples. A clinic officer, who I'm telling you is the first line, and it's evident because you can see they're the first medics to have been infected locally. 3 of them now. We earn a risk allowance of 3,000, the lowest in the field actually, with the highest earning 20,000. So how will that clinic officer feel appreciation from the government when they know they're the first line, the most exposed? Number 2, we are having some of our members, not clinic officers only, employed on some very, very humiliating contracts. In Naivasha General Hospital, in the Nakuru County Hospital, the former Nakuru PGH, we are having clinic officers, nurses, laboratory technicians, pharmaceutical technologists employed at 25,000. After deduction, they are getting 18,000. How can you tell this person that those are public facilities? How can you tell them that their government appreciates what they are doing?
Wait, but you guys swore to save lives first, and then all these other things will come by later.
That's basically what we are doing.
Okay.
We have not gone on the streets.
Okay.
What we are doing is that we are continuing with work. We are even innovating where we can. The clinic officers, I'm telling you, have been infected. They had the option to refuse because there were no protective equipments to see patients. But when you see the suffering of the patients and you know you are the only person who can help, I think it's inherent upon us that sometimes you feel that you just have to help, and sometimes you actually put yourselves in the harm's way. But we're also telling them as a union that if you know for sure this is a COVID-19 suspect and you are not protected, please do not try to assist because you'll put yourself at risk. The patients you would have saved tomorrow, you'll not save them and they'll die. So it's better you retract, you look for protective equipment, or you ask for somebody with the protective equipment to come and see that patient.
So then moving forward, before all these things and before the PPEs become perfect, because you see, when we talk about PPEs, probably a person watching us might be thinking, but at least you have it. Can't you start using it before it becomes standard or up to par, able enough to protect you guys from getting infected from the same? So what happens then moving forward before we get then the perfect PPEs for a person?
So number 1, we don't have it. They are manufacturing. I only saw some samples. I think we are starting to get some confidence that maybe we are going to get adequate, and we're also very happy that they actually locally made. It's our people who are benefiting. But on the side of training, and I will keep on insisting, the WHO Director General has also said this, that training is a basic that cannot be wished away. Because actually when removing PPE, even in the cases of Ebola, most of the medics who were infected, they were infected when they were removing their PPEs, because there is a procedure you need to concentrate on when removing so that you don't contaminate yourself. And the same might happen here. So it's not only the PPE, it's the PPE plus, of course, you have to be sensitized on how to use it safely.
Because confidence is what they really need.
Confidence is
to handle the same. So then again, what are you doing in terms of then preventing a lot of cases? Because so far we have 3 clinical officers who have been infected, to prevent then the numbers from growing, especially amongst the health workers, because again we need them aside from PPEs, aside from then or other cases of risk allowance and all those things. As health workers, what are you doing? Because I've seen in the US, some of them had to improvise some of the office supplies to make them as PPEs to work. Yes, and the trash bags as well.
So what we are doing is that we are also trying to, in some cases, we are trying to use what we can. You know, sometimes even the supplies like trash bags are even a challenge in our facilities. So what we are doing is, number one, we are telling them that ensuring the facility you are in, number one, the waiting bay is not overcrowded. Number two, you don't see your patients in an enclosed room. Number three, have a separate area where any patients with respiratory symptoms or who may have came into contact or had traveled should, with a good signage, that they should be able to be seen in that separate area. You can actually make a tent so that the suspected ones, the respiratory cases, you can see them separately in an open air where you have maintained your distance, and of course with the protective clothing, because now that will mean maybe only a few of you will require to have them, and maybe the advanced ones. And so you'll save the supplies so they can last longer and you can be protected.
And then very, very briefly, as we finish, in terms of then the level 2 and 3s in most counties, you see most of them are not equipped to handle such cases, and probably clinical officers are the first persons who then deal with these persons, when someone comes. So then what would you want, especially for the government, the Ministry of Health and county governments, to sort of do in terms of making sure that, fine, in as much as it's not like level 4 or level 5, but it's able to accommodate some of these cases that might present themselves, especially in rural areas?
That is why we want everybody trained, not a specific category. Because some of us, like myself, for now, I'm actually ready to go into an isolation. I'm even training myself. But I'm not talking on behalf of myself. I'm talking on behalf of that person who is most at risk, and the person that we must be able to protect. So we want them trained. We want them to have PPEs. We have the reorganization of health facility to reduce the risk, the overcrowding, to have a specific area where these people can be seen.
Okay. All right, Peter Washira, thank you very much for coming by today. And of course, just understanding some of the plight, especially for all the health workers and not only for clinical officers. So I hope that this will be sorted as soon as possible so that we can halt the spread of COVID-19. Back to you.
Welcome. Now let's take a look at the world of sports. FIFA has postponed its meeting with Sports Cabinet Secretary Amina Mohamed, Football Kenya Federation FKF President Nick Mbugua, and other football stakeholders by a month. Our reporter Benjamin Mwaka tells us more.
The much anticipated meeting is set to deliberate on the protracted impasse between FKF and the Sport Dispute Tribunal SDT on the aborted elections and the National Executive Committee members' term of office.
When you find that I did 95% correct, what is the right thing to do? You might advise that in future I change, but I think it is wrong for you to cancel an entire election for the second time for such a reason.
The sanctity of Kenyan constitution must be respected by FIFA. And FIFA to stop politicking in these countries. Soccer, management.
The meeting was originally slated for April 6th, but is now slated for May, subject to the situation with the ongoing coronavirus pandemic.
We want a normalization committee. We don't want meetings between FIFA and Mbugua again.
On March 25th, days after SDT Chairman John Ohaga nullified FKF county and national polls for the second time in 3 months, FIFA wrote back to FKF calling for a meeting between all 4 interested parties after it rejected the tribunal's request for them to form a normalization committee to oversee Kenyan's football.
This is what FIFA has said. This is a directive, and we shall rally our troops to follow that directive.
This is a nation that has a constitution that governs all bodies, including Kenyan soccer. And FIFA must follow the rules and regulation of a nation.
The tribunal, in its March 17th ruling, invalidated FKF's election for the second time in a row, But FIFA quashed the ruling, thus extending the stay into office of FKF's top leadership and the decision-making organ, the National Executive Committee.
They say they agreed the code is good, the board is good, but then they turn to the code and say, but inside the code, there's a clause which is not good. Then they should have just said, the code is not good.
You can't say today, SDT is good, tomorrow you say it's wrong. And I've talked about Veron. Veron is not good for African soccer in FIFA.
The SDT chair, John Ohaga, is set to deliver ruling on the status of the FKF election and also on FIFA's reaction on April 21st.
These fellows who are going to court, I can tell you, none of them, maybe except Sam Nyamoya, wanted to run for president.
Yes, I'm running for the presidency, but only on a free and fair election, devoid of politics.
Benjamin Waka, Ebru TV.
All right, on that note, this is where we wrap up Ebru Primetime News. Thank you so much for choosing Ebru Prime to keep you informed. As always, as the Ministry of Health is encouraging, wash your hands frequently for at least 20 seconds. Also, stay at home if you can. If you have to cough or sneeze, do it into your elbow. Of course, stay at home if you must, or if you don't have to go to work. This is Ebru Primetime News. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Diana Rachel Mbugua. Our sign language interpreter for tonight has been Joyce Werimo. Do have yourselves a lovely night and God bless you.